Apple stock has performed relatively well against its big cap tech peers. So I wanted to dig deeper into what's going on with Apple and their latest developments after the company reported their quarterly earnings results and held a conference call with Wall Street analysts describing their results.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
So in Apple's latest quarter, they reported revenue of $124 billion for the quarter that ended in December. That was up 4% from the same time last year and an all-time record for Apple. Now, Apple's revenue growth has stalled in the last 2 years, and just in the last 2 or so quarters have they actually started to increase their revenue growth. So 4%, while it seems extremely small for a company like Apple, it's getting going again, and that's creating enthusiasm from investors who are now more optimistic that the company's revenue growth can accelerate from this point forward. The earnings per share also set an all-time record of $2.40, which was 10% higher year over year. And this is something that Apple has done a phenomenal job about, even when revenue wasn't growing all that quickly or was flat or negative slightly. They were still finding ways to increase earnings per share by controlling costs and through their massive share buybacks, which, if you don't already know, increases earnings per share because it reduces the share count, and so the company's profits are split among fewer shares, thereby increasing earnings per share. Apple has repurchased billions of dollars in shares. In fact, in the latest quarter, I believe they repurchased 100 million shares of their stock. So Apple's saying that in the past year, they've seen nearly $100 billion in revenue from their services business. And they're announcing that they now have a new record installed base with over 2.35 billion active devices worldwide. So let me take each of those one at a time here. The services business of $100 billion in revenue is incredibly important to Apple because this segment generates significantly higher profit margins than the product segment. The services business in this recently completed quarter generated a gross profit margin of 75%. 75%, that's nearly twice what its product segment generated. Now, it needs its product segment to be sure, because without the products like the iPhone, people would not be buying the services that go along with the iPhone. But the services revenue helps make those products even more profitable and even more lucrative for Apple stock investors. And the services business is growing faster than the products business. And so that's lifting profitability for the company over the last 5 to 7 years, because of the mix of the business is now shifting more and more so towards services, which, as I mentioned, have higher profit margins. And the 2.3.5 billion devices, that's great news because those people that have devices are engaging with those devices, and that engagement, part of it buying services, part of it advertising, all of which helps Apple. Also, this is 2.3.5 billion devices that people are extremely happy with. The customer satisfaction rating for Apple's devices, the iPhone is over 95%, and other devices are over 90% as well. And that indicates, and also I will mention, Apple has done an incredible job of increasing the cost of switching. Once you get attached to the Apple ecosystem, it's very inconvenient to switch to another device. And so that high cost of switching is great news for investors. And when you couple that with the 2.3.5 billion active devices, it's a great source of future revenue because eventually these devices become dated and people start to desire an improvement and upgrade to the latest technology that Apple launches almost every year. And so that's 2.35 5 billion potential customers for that next device that comes out, that next update that comes out. And that's precisely what investors are excited about with Apple, is that replacement cycle, that upgrade cycle, as Apple starts infusing their newer devices with artificial intelligence, which is a compelling reason for people to upgrade their existing devices. And they even highlighted this, that they're going to continue rolling out more features in the future, including an even more capable Siri. And this is an opportunity that I'm optimistic about with Apple. I've been a long time Apple shareholder. I initially purchased my Apple shares, I think in 2015 or some, 10 years ago or so. So I have a large capital gain embedded in my Apple shares. And in the last, I would say 3 or 4 months, I've felt that, there are better stocks to own than Apple. But the reason I held on to my shares is because I don't want to sell them and pay that capital gains or incur that capital gains tax to switch over to another company. So I've just held on to my shares, even though I've been telling everyone that I think there's better investments right now than Apple, and I still feel that way. Even though Apple's a great company, I think the valuation has become so rich that there's many better investments out there. But one of the things I'm optimistic about is a more capable Siri, because that will make every device that much more valuable to people that are using it if Siri can become more capable. I've long felt that there's an opportunity there that Apple hasn't capitalized on to make this a more capable assistant and integrate it more, put more research and development into it. The technology exists to make this a better assistant. They just haven't really pushed it too much, and I'm glad to see them talking more about it and rolling out more features. So in the latest quarter, iPhone revenue came in at 69 billion, reaching an all-time iPhone revenue record in dozens of markets and regions. iPhone sales have been sluggish, and that's the big driver of the reason why Apple's revenue growth has not been great, is that iPhone sales have not been great. And it's several reasons contributing to this, including, competitively speaking, they're falling behind in China. And then many iPhones were purchased in 2020 and 2021, and people have been holding on to them longer than usual because of higher inflation and people having to pay higher prices for everyday things like transportation and rent and food. And so these discretionary items, things that, usually if they upgrade their iPhone every 3 years, that cycle has been prolonged because of the difficult consumer budget that resulting from higher inflation. But the big takeaway here is that the infusions with artificial intelligence to Apple's products is creating this enthusiasm for the replacement cycle, and you're starting to see the early signs of revenue accelerating at Apple, which investors have been waiting for so long now. It's been almost 2 years that it's really creating enthusiasm around the stock. Hey everyone, if you like watching my videos, then I've added a great complimentary product just for you. I've written a book that's available for sale now that highlights my 6-step investing framework. Even if you don't follow that investing framework, just reading it and knowing how I evaluate stocks will make it a lot more interesting and informative to watch my videos. I've added the link in the description below.